Welcome to the Daily Bible Reader Podcast. I am your host, Rakia Collins, and the mission of this podcast is to read the Bible from beginning to end every single year, starting in 2024. If that mission sounds interesting to you, I'd encourage you to grab your Bible and read along with me. And on today's episode, we are going to be reading Exodus 20 through Exodus 22. So diving right into Exodus 20, the 10 Commandments. And God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and the fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but on the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, your male servant or your female servant, your livestock or the sojourner who is within your gates. For in the 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male servant, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's. Now when all the people saw the thunder and the flashes of lightning, and the sound of the trumpet, and the mountain smoking, the people were afraid and trembled and stood far off and said to Moses, You speak to us, and we will listen, but do not let God speak to us, lest we die. Moses said to the people, Do not fear, for God has come to test you, that the fear of him may be before you, that you may not sin. The people stood far off, while Moses drew near to the thick darkness where God was. Laws about altars. And the Lord said to Moses, Thus you shall say to the people of Israel, You have seen for yourself that I have talked with you from heaven. You shall not make gods of silver to be with me, nor shall you make for yourselves gods of gold. An altar of earth you shall make for me, and sacrifice on it your burnt offerings and your peace offerings, your sheep and your oxen. In every place where I cause my name to be remembered, I will come to you and bless you. If you make me an altar of stone, you shall not build on it hewn stones, for if you wield your tool on it, you profane it. And you shall not go up by steps to my altar, that your nakedness be not exposed on it. So my commentary for chapter 20, there's 2 major verses that I really want to focus on. So this first one is going to come from verse 5 So here in verse 5, we see that God is essentially giving Moses the 10 Commandments. And so I love the one that's in verse 5 because it says, "You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and the fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments." This is so important and so critical because I never realized that the decision that I make could be something that impacts my children. Like, of course, we hear generational curses and we hear buzzwords even today now about like generational wealth and things of that nature. So it makes sense that things that you do would impact those that come after you. I just never looked at it from that perspective as it relates to God. Like, I never thought, okay, what you do is going to impact those that come after you, whether you show love to God and whether you are keeping his commandments and keeping his laws, or whether you are disrespectful to God and you just genuinely don't care. So for me, I thought that that was just very interesting to actually see that in the word and see it clearly spelled out, because I don't think I've ever really took stock of that before. And then the other piece of this chapter that I wanted to really break down goes into one of the actual commandments. And so verse 17, "You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male ox, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's." That is hard. And I know that this verse is talking about donkeys and oxes and females and male servants and things that we can't necessarily relate to, but it's the same thing as coveting someone's girlfriend or someone's wife or someone's house or someone's family. Being on social media, this spirit of covetousness is strong on social media because it makes you look at the perfect thing in someone else's life and feel like, I need that too. And you begin to covet that and you begin to really want that for yourself. And I want to make a distinction between coveting something and actually just having this as, I'd like that too. Like something like a goal. So it's my goal to get into $1 million home after you've seen someone's $1 million home and it becomes real to you and you're happy for them and you are inspired by that. But it is an entirely different spirit when you begin to covet something and you want it and you don't want anyone else to have it. And you see that someone else has something that you want, and now you're wishing harm or negative on them because they have something that you think you deserve. And now that person becomes the bad guy. And so I want to make sure that we're clear on the distinction between inspiration and allowing someone to inspire you compared to you actually coveting something that belongs to someone else. That is a very dangerous spirit. And as we can see here, God tells us in the 10 Commandments, do not covet. And what I love about reading the commandments for ourselves in this chapter is that if you just Google now, what are the 10 Commandments, you will see very short glimpses do not lie, do not steal, the way it's written here. But as we can see in verse 17, God expounds upon what does it look like to covet. And he gives very explicit, specific examples, because that is something that clearly back in those days, they were coveting someone else's ox or someone else's donkey. As crazy as that sounds to us now, why would I look at a donkey and want it? But again, looking at that through a modern lens, someone's car, someone's house, someone's wife, someone's purse, someone's wallet. It can be anything that belongs to someone else. So those were the main things that I took from chapter 20. I'd love to hear what you took from this chapter as well. So please feel free to drop a comment wherever you are listening or reach out to me directly on social media. I'd love to engage in a dialogue with you about, which one of the commandments are your favorite commandment, which one is something that you may struggle with or that you're trying to get better at. I'd love to engage with you and really hear from you. And now, Exodus chapter 21, laws about slaves. Now these are the rules that you shall set before them. When you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall serve 6 years, and in the 7th year he shall go out free for nothing. If he comes in single, he shall go out single. If he comes in married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons and daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out alone. But if the slave plainly says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free, then his master shall bring him to God, and he shall bring him to the door or the doorpost, and his master shall bore his ear through with an awl, and he shall be his slave forever. When a man sells his daughter as a slave, she shall not go out as the male slaves do. If she does not please her master, who has designated her for himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. He shall have no right to sell her to a foreign people, since he has broken faith with her. If he designates her for his son, he shall deal with her as with a daughter. If he takes another wife to himself, he shall not diminish her food, her clothing, or her marital rights. And if he does not do these 3 things for her, she shall go out for nothing, without payment of money. Whoever strikes a man so that he dies shall be put to death. But if he did not lie in wait for him, but God let him fall into his hand, then I will appoint for you a place to which he may flee. But if a man willfully attacks another to kill him by cunning, you shall take him from my altar that he may die. Whoever strikes his father or his mother shall be put to death. Whoever steals a man and sells him, and anyone found in possession of him, shall be put to death. Whoever curses his father or his mother shall be put to death. When men quarrel and one strikes the other with a stone or with his fist, and the man does not die but takes to his bed, then if the man rises again and walks outdoors with his staff, he who struck him shall be clear. Only he shall pay for the loss of his time and shall have him thoroughly healed. When a man strikes his slave, male or female, with a rod, and the slave dies under his hand, he shall be avenged. But if the slave survives a day or 2, he is not to be avenged, for the slave is his money. When men strive together and hit a pregnant woman so that her children come out, but there is no harm, the one who hit her shall surely be fined, as the woman's husband shall impose on him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. But if there is harm, then you shall pay life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. When a man strikes the eye of his slave, male or female, and destroys it, he shall let the slave go free because of his eye. If he knocks out the tooth of his slave, male or female, he shall let the slave go because of his tooth. When an ox gores a man or a woman to death, the ox shall be stoned, and its flesh shall not be eaten, but the owner of the ox shall not be liable. But if the ox has been accustomed to gore in the past, and its owner has been warned but has not kept it in, and it kills a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned, and its owner also shall be put to death. If a ransom is imposed on him, then he shall give for the redemption of his life whatever is imposed on him. If it gores a man's son or daughter, he shall be dealt with according to the same rule. And if the ox gores a slave, male or female, the owner shall give to their master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. Laws about restitution. When a man opens a pit, or when a man digs a pit and does not cover it, and an ox or a donkey falls into it, the owner of the pit shall make restitution. He shall give money to its owner, and the dead beast shall be his. When one man's ox butts another so that it dies, then they shall sell the live ox and share its price, and the dead beast also they shall share. Or, if it is known that the ox has been accustomed to gore in the past, and its owner has not kept it in, he shall repay ox for ox, and the dead beast shall be his. So my commentary for chapter 21 is actually pretty short. I look at chapter 21 from the lens of God telling Moses how he expected the people to treat those that were servants or slaves to them at that particular point in time, and the way they were to deal with one another, whether you were the slave or whether you were not. That's really how I look at chapter 21. Exodus chapter 22. If a man steals an ox or a sheep and kills it or sells it, he shall repay 5 oxen for an ox and 4 sheep for a sheep. If a thief found breaking in and is struck so that he dies, there shall be no blood guilt for him. But if the sun has risen on him, there shall be blood guilt for him. He shall surely pay. If he has nothing, then he shall be sold for his theft. If the stolen beast is alive in his possession, whether it is an ox or a donkey or a sheep, he shall pay double. If a man causes a field or a vineyard to be grazed over, or let his beast loose, and it feeds on another man's field, he shall make restitution from the best in his own field and in his own vineyard. If fire breaks out and catches in thorns, so that the stacked grain of the standing grain or the field is consumed, he who started the fire shall make full restitution. If a man gives to his neighbor money or goods to keep safe, and it is stolen from the man's house, then if the thief is found, he shall pay double. If the thief is not found, the owner of the house shall come near to God to show whether or not he has put his hand to his neighbor's property. For every breach of trust, whether it is for an ox, for a donkey, for a sheep, for a cloak, or for any kind of lost thing, of which one says, "This is it," the case of both parties shall come before God. The one whom God condemns shall pay double to his neighbor. If a man gives to his neighbor a donkey or an ox or a sheep or any beast to keep safe, and it dies or is injured or is driven away without anyone seeing it, an oath by the Lord shall be between them to see whether or not he has put his hand to his neighbor's property. The owner shall accept the oath, and he shall not make restitution. But if it is stolen from him, he shall make restitution to its owner. If it is torn by beast, let him bring it as evidence. He shall not make restitution for what has been torn. If a man borrows anything of his neighbor and it is injured or dies, the owner not being with it, he shall make full restitution. If the owner was with it, he shall not make restitution. If it was hired, it came for its hiring fee. Laws about social justice. If a man seduces a virgin who is not betrothed and lies with her, he shall give the bride price for her and make her his wife. If her father utterly refuses to give her to him, he shall pay equal to the bride price for virgins. You shall not permit a sorceress to live. Whoever lies with an animal shall be put to death. Whoever sacrifices to any god other than the Lord alone shall be devoted to destruction. You shall not wrong a sojourner or oppress him, for you were sojourners in the land of Egypt. You shall not mistreat any widow or fatherless child. If you do mistreat them and they cry out to me, I will surely hear their cry, and my wrath will burn, and I will kill you with the sword, and your wives shall become widows and your children fatherless. If you lend money to any of my people with you who is poor, you shall not be like a moneylender to him, and you shall not exact interest from him. If you ever take your neighbor's cloak in pledge, you shall return it to him before the sun goes down, for that is his only covering, and it is his cloak for his body, and what else shall he sleep? And if he cries to me, I will hear, for I am compassionate. You shall not revile God, nor curse a ruler of your people. You shall not delay to offer from the fullness of your harvest and from the outflow of your presses. The firstborn of your sons you shall give to me. You shall do the same with your oxen and with your sheep. 7 days it shall be with its mother. On the 8th day you shall give it to me. You shall be consecrated to me. Therefore, you shall not eat any flesh that is torn by beasts in the field. You shall throw it to the dogs. Chapter 22. As I mentioned in chapter 21, I really look at these next couple of chapters as God giving rules and regulations for what should be done, like what you should do if these situations were to happen. What I will say that I find very interesting about this chapter in particular is that we have a section for social justice. And the same way we had a section for restitution back in chapter 21, or the laws about slaves in chapter 21 as well. It's fascinating to me just as an overall concept that as humans, because we are so corrupt by nature, as we learned in Genesis, our hearts as humans naturally err towards evil and naturally have a bend towards that. Given that we're born in a sinful, fallen world, it's fascinating to me that God took the time to really lay down these types of laws for us. And it's not fascinating in the sense of, wow, like he did this. It's like, wow, like we serve a God that genuinely cares, that even in our fallenness, even in our wretchedness, he's like, listen, these are the rules and the regulations that I would like for you to use when you deal with one another. And these are some of the very specific situations that I want to call out that are very important. And I think that's amazing. I think that it really speaks to the type of God that we serve. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you found some value out of this content. If you did, please leave me a rating or a review wherever you are listening. This would mean the absolute world to me, and I'd love to hear from you on social media. Please feel free to reach out on Twitter at His Eternal Word, the number 1. And please feel free to visit the website at www.thedailybiblereader.com. And I hope you stay tuned for the next episode.